I think we're live, so we're just going to start.
I don't think so.
Yeah, the chat board is going.
I'm going to be the moderator for the second panel discussion, Immersive XR Stage, Expanding Horizons for the Location-Based Entertainment Industry. Cheers, everybody. Again, we're going to use the same Q&A chat at the end. If anybody has any questions to share with the panel, please go ahead and do that. Before we dive into the topic, I'd like to invite our panel to quickly just briefly introduce themselves. So maybe we just start with Dane. Are you there?
I am. Hi, folks. Welcome. Thank you very much for attending our first virtual Pre-IAAPA launch. It's a really exciting panel. I'm the vice president of the third floor.
And Jeroen, are you there?
I am. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me, Steve. Really appreciate this. Thank you, Dane, for hosting this. This is a real great opportunity. I'm Jeroen Hallaert. I'm Vice President for Everything Production Services for PRG.
And Felix.
Hello, everybody. I'm Felix Jorge. I'm the Creative Director and CEO at Happy Mushroom. Nice to see you all.
Michael, sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm the founder and CEO of Worldbuildr, which is a pre-visualization and show control solutions company.
And anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Steve Ryan. I've spent the last 30 years working in themed entertainment. I had the opportunity to build a couple of theme parks over the last 30 years. And I now work with the developers and owners, helping them provide planning and design and attraction delivery support. So let's get into this panel. What does it mean, this immersive XR stage, and what does it have to do with location-based entertainment? Well, for those of you who are not familiar with this new tech, you check out the Disney Plus Gallery series, Star Wars, The Mandalorian. In episode 4, they focus all on this tech, which ILM calls stagecraft, or the volume. In this episode, it also describes virtual production methodology used to deliver the show. Our friends at PRG refer to this as the XR stage. For myself as an attraction producer, I find this really groundbreaking. I think the combination of fine pitch LED screens, the game engine software really allows guests to move around in a photorealistic environment alongside practical sets with full lighting control over both the virtual world and the physical world. You know, I think the goal of this panel is to bring some awareness to this emerging tech around XR stages and how it can truly expand the horizons for location-based entertainment. See how I brought that all around? Anyhow, to better understand some of this tech, let's discuss some of the background. So specifically some of the tools used in the development of these immersive XR stages. And maybe let's start with Dane. Again, tell us how the third floor has been working with Hollywood and the LBE community to sort of shape the virtual production toolkit.
Well, it's a natural fit if you think about it. These are long-term projects that require very specific technical and creative decisions to be made early on. So there's 3 entry points in the life cycle of a theme park. The first is blue sky. It's the owner has a space or an IP, an indication that they want to develop something, and then it's about consensus building. So we create a really compelling trip through the park, if you will. And it's less technical and more creative. It's designed to build enthusiasm and show potential collaborators the goal. Later on, as the park starts to develop and technical and creative questions require a little more fleshing out, we enter a tech viz stage where it's more of a technical diagram. Where are things going to be placed? What is your throughput? What are the various technical parameters that you're working with? What's possible in the space? And today, we've now evolved into creating final pixels and some of the media that you actually enjoy as an audience member, as a guest in the park. And this has really been powered by game engine and collaborations with people like Jeroen and Felix and Michael, who have developed skill sets and tools for the park developer that allow them to make decisions early on that they're going to be very happy with as the life cycle continues.
Cool. How about Felix? Can you talk to us a little bit about how Happy Mushroom creates these virtual sets for these XR stages?
Yeah, I think it's our goal to lower the barrier of entry for creatives. And I think I see myself more as an enabler than sometimes a creator. So yes, we create all these gigantic sets, but because now everything's real time, we have put in place these virtual reviews where individuals like Jon Favreau and Andrew Jones and 10 others could be working from home, put a headset on, visit these virtual sets, and before having a production of 100 people on stage, they're already seeing and they've already accounted for every single detail before the day. So in a way, I feel like the technology is fantastic because it's introducing creatives that potentially wouldn't have the influence in it before. And so through that input, it's that we're able to deliver sets that are unique and different. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jeroen, after touring the Glendale XR stage, I really understood how PRG be able to integrate everything together from the LED walls, the media servers, the interactive lighting, the camera tracking, the show scenic, the virtual sets all come together seamlessly. What are these tools that you guys are using to help optimize this new tech?
Well, the great thing about the technology is that it is absolutely scalable. You brought up in your introduction the Mandalorian, which is kind of the pinnacle in terms of size and the amount of technology, but that exact same technology is on a more accessible level when you start scaling this down. That's what makes it really interesting to be able to provide that for filmmakers alike, because it is in the end a filmmaker-driven workflow. Mm-hmm. It's parallel processing almost, in where we remove the barriers between live production and visual effects, so they can occur simultaneously instead of in line. And the technology in order to do that today has taken giant steps ahead. Not only in terms of processing power on the GPU, CPU side, but also the way different technologies started to be more and more integrated, making it into a way more straightforward workflow, and keeping our finger on the pulse of what's happening is what we at PRG really strive to do, and at the same time try to innovate as well.
Thank you. Hey, Michael, how about, you've been an early promoter of this tech in attraction use, especially the game engine control software. What can you tell us about the impacts of real-time rendered content and game engines for LBE?
Well, I mean, it's an incredibly disruptive technology for LBE. A lot of, LBE as we know it, really, we're telling linear stories. Most of them, if they involve media, it's pre-rendered, but game engines are a useful tool for pre-visualization, but also for the experience itself, where, look, they're used to create video games. So, different variables can procedurally generate media, to deliver on that promise of it's a different ride every time, which is something, we've been talking about as sort of the holy grail for many years. Now we can actually do it because nothing is pre-rendered. And, it's a tool that was originally designed to create video games where you can have a character and the character levels up and has different weapons and goes to different places and gets to choose where they go. It's the same technology. It's now just being used in a LBE setting, but it is very disruptive in terms of both the experiences themselves and also the media creation process. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of people in our industry who have been, producing media for some of these attractions for decades are now having to relearn an entirely new pipeline and a new set of tools that's really closer to video games than it is for film and TV.
Yeah.
I'm always curious as to sort of, see how this tech has advanced, from the last few years. And maybe and where it's heading. So, Dane, I don't know if you can talk at all about, how you've seen the hardware and the software change over the last few years that sort of gets us to where we are today.
So the way a lot of people describe this new ecosystem is virtual production. And really simply put, it's melding together the digital and physical in real time and allowing creatives to make decisions. So you're bringing animation, editorial, lighting, all of those decisions that in a linear pipeline for filmmaking, at least, used to be done after you step off of set. And many times we just crossed our fingers and hoped for the best. It's now being done up front. And initially, this was very expensive, groundbreaking technology that really, the first time I became aware of it was the first Avatar. And a lot of the people that sort of grew out of that community started to branch off and form their own companies and meld together with game makers. And at the same time, software and hardware started to evolve and become less expensive, more accessible. And we have several people from that original community working in our studio. And I know many others have been trained by them, mentored by them, and started their own studios. And what this has done is allowed us to demonstrate to studios and executives, people that hold the budget and are responsible for resources, the massive advantages that you have if you are able to front load those decisions. And on projects like the Mandalorian that we're working on with Felix right now, but even on lower budget, quick turnaround fare commercials, live television, the idea that anything digital can be integrated into your set and adjusted in real time. And in fact, as Michael was pointing out, to cater to this whole generation that's grown up with the director's, power in their hands. They want to tell a story. They want to interact with the characters. That's now becoming possible, practical, and able to monetize in the theme parks. So the evolution has really become melding together the gaming community and filmmaking community and offering something that has a real cost benefit and adds to the visual fidelity and experience of the products we're creating. And if you add COVID on top of that, which is something that's accelerated all of this, and people require contactless content creation, the demand has just been crazy. I know everyone on this panel's phone is ringing off the hook, and we're scrambling to keep up with the demand for education and evaluation of this new technology.
How about Felix? I'm used to sort of seeing, video game resolution not being the photoreal. So what advances have been made that allows us to get to these photoreal sets that you guys are creating?
Yeah, I think hardware, it's a mixture of hardware and then the flexibility of being able to create a workflow that lowers the barrier of entry and allowing creatives to come up with creative solutions on how to make it look way better. And I really think part of the secret sauce is allowing those high-level creatives to understand their own limitations and then go, you know what? I'm going to make this look amazing. So I think hardware has been amazing, multi-session and being able to work from home and have people networked together at once. You grab your headset. By the time you jump in, the rest of the 10 people that you need to be in the meeting are there. You could have the experience that you had probably back in the 50s when you were going to make a movie. You used to go out to the desert and you would go and sit down and you'd go, man, how do we make this movie cheaper if we just could shoot as many scenes when we go on this trip so we can save as much money as possible? And so that's part of what has progressed virtual sets forward. On top of that, now we have individuals like Happy Mushroom who are really working hard to hire not only game guys, but film guys and previs guys. And so that hybrid allows you to focus not only on story, but on fidelity. And the game guys, what they do for us is make sure that all those assets can carry through over to VFX. So you can also create a lossless pipeline, which means you don't have to redo things over and over again. You are just taking some of that budget from that used to be used at the end, and you bring it to the foreground, to the beginning, so that those creatives at the beginning could influence these worlds. And you no longer have to play the game of telephone later that all of us go through that game, and it's the worst game because you're trying to explain things in a place
that are visual
hours to really show you the results. Now we're doing all those changes in minutes. All of a sudden, you're pumping out. In a couple months, you could have 100 sets come out and variants of those sets with different lighting scenarios, keeping into account all the different brains, the director, the DP, set designers, the model makers, the on-set physical person. And so I think that's one of the biggest changes that has happened in the virtual set world that's pushing them so much further than it used to be. Of course, better rendering has allowed us to hit the fidelity, but the iteration process is where the secret sauce is at.
And how about Jeroen, about the hardware side of these of this equipment that's being used on the XR stages? I mean, I guess the LED screens are now at a quality level that allows you to see this fidelity that we can get on the software side.
Yes, absolutely. The LED screens also now kind of reached a pinnacle as well, because there is a point where they can't put the pixels any closer to each other. And then there's also obviously on the camera side, in this case, where the camera still needs to find some level of contrast to work with. So ideally, today at least, we operate between the 2 and 4 millimeter. The main innovation to be made on the LED side is, going forward at least, is those panels were not designed or made initially to do this kind of work. They were created for something completely else. So I think going forward, the manufacturers on the other side of the ocean, they will need to come up with a way in where cameras will still be able to see those higher pixel pitches. That's going to be a big innovation. HDR is going to be a big innovation coming soon. That's what I see on the LED side. Some other pieces of the hardware is to find the higher fidelity in tracking, both camera tracking and people tracking. That's going to be interesting how we're going to move forward and find the possibilities to track groups of people, which is going to be very interesting in the LBE world, because we want to try to step away from an individual experience in where you have a goggle more into a group experience. That's going to be very interesting to see development happening on that side going forward. And then obviously everything that's being driven or generated by a computer is going to be dependent on that evolution. What I said earlier on the CPU and GPU side of things, which is an ever-growing, ever-evolving process, and super fast, by the way, as well.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, it really seems that the game engine is the powering of this whole is the power behind this whole immersive entertainment that we're going to be seeing emerging. Why do you think this platform is so suited for being the hub of it all and pulling it all together, both the fidelity as well as the interactivity?
Well, it's the key to interactivity and to procedural experiences. And we've been talking about the Mandalorian and the volume, and for those listening in, what that simply is a camera filming people on set with an LED wall behind them, sort of like a green screen or a blue screen. But the key difference is that if the camera moves, if it's a handheld camera or a crane or a dolly shot or something, if the camera moves, the perspective in the media is able to shift that parallax to accommodate the movement of the camera and change the perspective from the camera's point of view in real time, because you have no idea if it's a handheld camera, where's the cameraman going to go? What's he going to do? It just happens automatically. Those two things are in lockstep. And the fact of the matter is, this idea of shifting parallax in the background is actually something we've been doing in LBE for quite some time. On our previous panel, Thierry and Phil, they basically invented it for Spider-Man. But they were talking about how, you know, they had to lock the ride path 2 years before the ride opened. And, you know, that's because in order for that effect on Spider-Man to work, the parallax of the pre-rendered media has to match the movement of the ride profile, so that when the ride vehicle moves, the media appears to move in the opposite direction. But with a game engine, all of a sudden, you don't have to do that 2 years before. You can do that 1 frame before. And, you know, you can create a procedural track path where you don't know where the vehicle is going to move. And it might move through a scene based on variables that have been predetermined.
Exactly.
And so then all of a sudden, game engines are crucial. It's the only way that you can then procedurally create that moving eye point parallax in the same way that the Mandalorian does it. Because in essence, our vehicle, our POV is the camera. We're just not watching TV. We're a real person in that space. So to create that illusion for us, that parallax needs to work. And if the ride path is procedural, then that parallax has to be procedural as well. And the only way to do that is with game engines.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I understand from, you know, the Mandalorian producers were looking for cost-effective ways to deliver Star Wars adventure on a limited budget and schedule. Those producers, I guess, understand the value of this virtual production and how it can be utilized on the set or and on XR stages, you know. But LBE sort of presents a different set of problems to solve, you know, because we're doing things for a lot longer and, you know, probably much bigger budgets. I'd like to ask the group, you know, if they could think of some top 3 challenges, let's say, for facing LBE, that if we're going to roll out these XR stages into attractions, you know, what might they be going forward? Maybe we start with Michael again, real quick, if he's got any challenges that we might be facing.
I think some of the challenges are hardware, catching up to the software, because, you know, we're not looking at previs on a desktop monitor. Something like Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, you know, that's a projection dome that, you know, the guests are right up close to, and it's projecting at an incredibly high fidelity some of this real-time procedural media. And in order to do that, Disney had to create a custom rig with NVIDIA, you know, the super robust graphics card that could power all of this to happen at a high fidelity and at a constant high frame rate in order to achieve that level of graphics that guests expect from pre-rendered media. So it's going to take a little bit of time for that type of hardware to trickle down, I think, you know, from Disney to the wider LBE industry. So I think that's a big challenge, is hardware. And then, as I said before, I think the second big challenge is familiarity with game engines and the production process. And truly, I can see everybody.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
and truly how it really is different from film in such a fundamental way.
Felix, when we were working on Universal Singapore, we started using some game engines. Actually, it was just we were using CGI assets to sort of create our sets. And I know the art directors that we were working with at the time were used to drawing and illustrations. And so, is there a challenge for the new art directors that are coming in to work in this environment? You know, making sure that it's not just for that both the physical assets that are needed for the physical environment can also be created, and that everybody together can sort of look into these models and move around and understand, you know, what they're looking at, what these look like.
Yeah, I would like to change the word challenge for opportunity. I think there was a little gap there for a minute where VFX and the art department were separated. And I was in the middle of it for many years where I would be in art departments and people wouldn't want me there. And I was just there to help do these really basic sets, working with the third floor for 8 years, helping introduce people to 3D. And so using Maya, it was the barrier of entry is much higher than using Unreal. when we're using Maya, you need to go to college to learn Maya.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to like, there's a lot to learn, and really it's not real time. So you're getting only a small piece of it. So there's also less motivation to really learn it. And so Unreal and what this real-time pipeline has done is create an opportunity for a lot of creatives to, I mean, our studio is building tools for these creatives to lower the barrier of entry so that they could just come in and knowing what they know and working the way that they work, they could hop on board in a week. And so it's those tools and those opportunities that the real-time engine gives us that Maya and or other platforms weren't giving us. So the challenges, I think, are with time and even in the next 5 to 10 years, the challenges are going to be mental. How much do you want to create? You know, and the barrier of entry is going to be so low across different studios because we are all finding ways to now build tools. Teams are no longer in the art department just a designer. Now I have an engineer and a tech artist in there full time. And those engineers, when my artists go, man, I wish I could put a dust layer on everything. I used to have to go and paint all of that. Now, when my set designer comes in and she says she wants a dust layer and everything, I have a material. My tech artist built it. I press a button and there's a dust layer on everything. And so what it introduces is maybe you're not the person that's doing it yourself every single detail of the way, but with one human being or two human beings right there with you and a strong support system, you could have the brain of James Cameron or Steven Spielberg or Jon Favreau, where they don't only write into a story, they write into technology. That's why they are so brilliant. It's because they understand the tech, and when they're writing their script, they've already gone through the rings of who's going to do it, how are we going to do it, why is it that I want to do it this way. And so I really think that that's the part that's changing. You now have an opportunity to think of ideas and with a very low barrier of entry, realize them. So,
Dane, you want to jump in there too?
I do. I want to answer your question in a different way. I think I'm in agreement with Felix that the only challenge very soon will be your imagination. And I also want to think about theme parks. It's changing, but quite often because of the real estate required, you have to drive there. Okay, there's a commitment. You're going off someplace. It's not a last minute, decision, something that you walk by. Also, the gate is more expensive. Let's be honest. It's 5 times the price of a film. So the goal of the operator is to deliver something worthy of that. That's going to drive repeat business. It's going to blow people's minds. And on the other side of it, your audience is very invested in the IP. Whether it's Star Wars, Harry Potter, they've grown up with it. They've spent hours reading and watching films and in communities of people that enjoy it. And there's a social aspect to theme parks that's very important. And all of this technology and all of the tools that the engine can provide and all of the groundbreaking opportunities that present really don't do anything if you don't have a strong narrative that feels true to that IP and it transcends the technology. It's amazing to walk onto these LED volumes. I was on one today and you just completely forget that you're in a physical location in a dark box in a park. You're in a desert or on the moon with the naked eye, and you look through the viewfinder, the camera, and you see motion and performance capture piped in, and the lighting and everything is so perfect immediately you could make rapid decisions. So once you remove all of those challenges from the creative, what's left is the imagination. We're right back, as someone said earlier, to the 1950s. What is it that you want to do? Because the barrier of entry is getting lower and lower, and the cost of operating these tools is getting lower, and we have a huge audience. Go ahead.
The weight is getting lower. I mean, now we could create a blueprint where the next couple of years, like we're starting to do it with some of our partners, where you could actually carry a lot of these assets into VFX and one-to-one a lot of times. We can now export these things out of the engine, and if things like decals that didn't work before, we built a tool. And so there's just ways to now make it something that's not wasteful.
And the unique position Unreal is taking is they're actually bringing filmmakers into the company and into the fold and listening to what their challenges are and designing around that, which is risky because we all know the revenue that games generate. They're staking a claim in LBE and filmmaking and content and immersive experiences that is unproven at this point. But I think everyone on this panel would agree that that is where we're headed. And I think it's a very wise choice. And I know that everything, we're in close contact with these companies, and everything that's on the horizon, everything they're designing is very exciting. And Felix is right. Part of the team now are engineers, people that write code.
Yeah.
Jeroen, you and I talked earlier about, the changes that are coming to the LED panel world and the difference between, LED panels and projection. Again, do you see that as a challenge moving forward, or a restraint for location-based entertainment, the cost of ownership of LED versus projection?
No, both have their pros and cons. Projection will always stay around, especially when you're dealing with more complex surfaces to project on. As long as you can't bend light still. Mm-hmm. You still have to, when you're working with LED, you're working with flat panels. With projection, you can throw it on basically anything. So that there is a use definitely for both. I'm very interested in finding hybrids actually, mm-hmm. where we combine both of them.
Great. For this next segment, I thought we could maybe look toward the future a little bit of LBE and some predictions or some thoughts of how you guys think this tech could be rolled out into more widespread use. I mean, we've seen some examples recently. Universal's Born Stuntacular is using large LED screens, with game engines to sort of give the illusion that you are in the movie. We saw it with Spider-Man, and we've seen it with Disney's Rise of the Resistance. Felix, where do you see us heading with these virtual sets and how they can impact the future of LBE?
I think I'm looking forward to planned open worlds that allow people to have experiences that are not restrained to a location. So allowing people to explore different areas, but also just AI and deep learning. Deep learning is crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like we've been involved with a couple of projects in deep learning, and deep learning is I played The Witcher, and 6 of my friends played The Witcher, and every one of us had different experiences with every mission. And so having these unique experiences using things that are similar to AI, I mean, AI is it's a very broad term, and really I think it's probably it's things that resemble AI. I think that's something that as we move forward, and these worlds could be generated procedurally, where literally every step that you take, the next step is new, is going to be one of the ways that everything's going to change. Part of it is that when something's procedural, you actually have a lot of cost savings because you have less assets and you have less. It's more about the code and how it's using it in the environment. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm excited about in the next 5 years, because right now we're already doing photorealistic sets in Unreal. We're already, that's the old one we cracked. Use it for things where the user is making the choices and where you have 100 users making them at once. And so that's where I think the LB is going to benefit tremendously.
Great. Michael, the game engine power is getting greater and greater, and it's gone beyond just sort of high fidelity graphics. It also, as you know, is part of a show, can be used for show control or control shows. So how do you see this technology, game engine, sort of affecting the future of the next generation of attractions?
Well, Steve, thanks for the softball, because this is exactly what we're doing with Worldbuildr. Yeah. Basically, one of the things we figured out at Worldbuildr is, why stop at previs if you are building this thing in a virtual world and you are iterating on it, and it may start very crudely, with a napkin sketch and scratch track audio, but if it ends with a photorealistic version of the thing that you're building, then why not just have the thing that you've built, the thing that you've built digitally, control the thing that you have built physically? Because then you figured out all of your timing, all of your cues. One of the biggest sort of choke points in the process for LBE is that a lot of the final show control programming happens on site during the end of construction before opening, when all of the elements come together. And that's a huge risk point. So, it's similar to film previs in the sense that you can figure all those things out beforehand, virtually, but then the previs ends up not being a sunk cost. It just transitions into becoming the operating system and the operating software. So that's stuff that we're actively working on, and it's quite exciting. Oh, and then something else that I see happening quite a bit, this concept of a digital twin, connecting the virtual world to the real world. And if you do it this way, then on opening day you have your physical LBE installation that you built, but as a byproduct of the entire process, at no additional cost, it's just a byproduct, you have this digital twin of the thing that you built that is identical. So that allows more of a circular experience for guests to visit the site at the location, but then continue their experience in the virtual world. You don't need to pay extra money to connect those two things, because the way that you've built it makes them inseparable, essentially.
Let's not forget 3D printing. We're looking into large scale printing of virtual sets now. All of a sudden, we're designing sets in Unreal. We have all 10 creatives to get buy off, and then you print it. Yeah. And so it's pretty amazing stuff.
There's also
Jeroen,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, if you're asking about the horizon, I think there's two places where I think there's going to be phenomenal growth. I've been working with studio chiefs and people that are interested in finding a way in, an entry point to this new technology. And it always stops with the physical build, because they're not willing to go to the expense of building one of these volumes, because they know that every single project is bespoke. It's all customized. You're never going to have the same set of rules, and it's a massive risk. At the same time, the state of the world today is driving down real estate value. So there are people that have large real estate holdings that are looking at this technology as a way to monetize the space. And once we start to see some of these volumes open up for business as a retail business to content creators, we're going to see an explosion in demand. And I think, Mandalorian, very happy to work on it. I love projects like The Lion King and the technology behind them. Most of the content we create isn't that. It's episodic and commercials and lower budget fare and game cinematics. And there's a whole host of, we do 100 projects a year at our company, and probably 8 of them are those giant tent poles that everyone recognizes, and the rest are just these serviceable pieces of content. I think that's going to present a huge opportunity. Then back to my comment earlier about community, if you look at Party Royale, which is an opportunity for people like Marshmello and Travis Scott to do a live performance.
I was just going to come up with that.
spoke to gamers, and so suddenly you've got the EDM crowd is figuring out what Fortnite is so that they can see Marshmello perform, and his numbers go through the roof, and his social media metrics go sky high. And then you've got people that are in the gaming community who weren't aware of this person, and the overlap just drove the numbers. I mean, you can look into this if you do a little research. The benefit is crazy, and I know that Jeroen's involved in developing the platform and allowing these artists to perform. And in the short term, the live touring business is gone, Cirque du Soleil, a lot of these opportunities to come together as a community, enjoy a live performance are gone, but it presents a huge opportunity for the digital community and for people that have the same interest in music or an artist or a game, regardless of where they are in the world, as long as they have an internet connection, to participate. And then for creatives to layer the digital and physical world together, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Absolutely.
Jeroen, you want to give me a 2-minute or 1 minute answer to the future there so we can go to questions still, or do you have any further thoughts?
Well, one of the more exciting things for me personally is really with the ongoing collaboration like we have with Dane and the team at Third Floor, innovation and even standardization in the coming 5 years, decade maybe. The industry can really address all of the inefficiencies inherent in production and the workflows that come with it. We're going to overcome all of the key challenges, continued progress, and ultimately, and that's the final goal for everybody on this panel, I think, we're going to enable the storytellers really to create richer stories more quickly and easily. And that's what I take away not only from this panel, but that's also what I'm personally very excited about. On the technological level, we think today we kind of have control over the visual aspects. So now we're ready to touch base on our other senses. So we're gradually working on making the experience on a sound level more interesting, where we start experimenting with binaural sound. Obviously, when we're sending out these, as you can see behind me, we're actually doing a shoot right now. And the way we're going to treat the sound is an after treatment, in where we're going to have on the broadcast, which is a dirty mono going into stereo on people's personal devices. With a small treatment, we're going to be able to have a binaural experience, and where the sound literally is a spatial experience. So that's one of the things we're working on very hard, to really add on more to the senses. And that's going to, in the end, be translated into location-based entertainment, where I put the E in LBE, not so much entertainment, more experience, and have really all the senses covered.
Great, we've got
do that one some more. I like that one. Yeah. No,
Write it down.
I'm done.
I want to try to get to maybe one or two of these questions. We got a whole bunch of really good questions. A lot of them are somewhat technical, and I think maybe Felix, you can sort of talk to this one here regarding, when the content's created for these XR stages, how finished are those environments when they go into the physical production, or are there still, post-production elements that are being, cleaned up, or can we say that it's absolutely finished when they go to the stage and what you see in camera is finished content?
So I think to answer that question, you want to understand how your environment is going to be used. So there are ways to have final, in-camera shots, but it's not going to be all the shots. There are limitations. So one of the things that I always work with individuals when I'm talking about virtual sets is, what are your shooting methods? Are you going to use the environment during a driving sequence? That's going to tell me that I can make an environment that's not that high quality. Typically in a driving sequence, you're driving by, it's blurry. So that's a version that you're going to be able to get. Now, if you're telling me that it's a fluid sim and it's going to be, you need some effects in the background, in that case, you could use the environment for lighting in other ways. However, there are different sequences and shots that you will be able to get fully in camera. Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
yeah.
And this panel is going to be around afterward too. I guess one more technical question. I don't know if it's for Jeroen or for Dane. I know Dane, we talked about the third floor is, being able to sort of link together multiple servers. And so it's a little technical. It's like, if you have a game engine and you want to spread out to multiple, let's say, displays, can you outsource or can you output a game engine to multiple screens or to more than 10 projectors? Or
absolutely. I think that's settled science. I am not an engineer. I'm a producer, but I see that technology. I witnessed it earlier today. I've seen it many times, and the missing component in a lot of people's plans to build these volumes or operate them are those people behind the scenes that can tie together the engine, the creator's wishes, and the technical problems that you always have to solve in any creative process. You've got moraying issues, you've got different frame rates, there's a dead pixel. you need highly skilled people to immediately be able to address those issues. And that's why I recommend to anyone that comes through our door to find those partnerships. And I spend a lot of time exploring all of the people that work in that field, so we have trusted partners, because there isn't really a turnkey solution yet. And I want to yield any time I have left to Jeroen, because I'm not a technical person. We start talking about servers and game engine, I get a little nervous.
You actually answered most of it. Absolutely. What's interesting, just a small add, is that the engineer that used to sit in the back of the room is now in the front seat driving the whole thing. That's a very interesting evolution I saw happening the last 9 to 10 months almost.
That's the same guys with the lighters that used to be back in the closets. I think it's really a change in. It's no longer enough to just be a good artist. You also maybe want to have a little bit of, you're going to have to potentially work with someone directly. That's going to, there's collaboration that happens now. And we have to be aware of what our neighbors are doing. And I wanted to come back to what you're saying, Dane. When these servers are connected, the third floor is connected to the VAD, which is Happy Mushroom, which is connection to PRG or Lux, or which is connected to. And so when I push something up, they're in the same ecosystem, and they can get it in an instant's time, because it's all real time. So animation happens, we got it. Virtual set lighting changes, he gets it. Jeroen did something on set where he moved some props, I get it. It's just all connected.
And the bar is raised for the people. I came up through genre, on-set, low-budget filmmaking. So you have a grip, and you have people climbing ladders and putting up lights and filters. And, there's definitely skill in that, but the training is pretty rapid, and a lot of it's on site. Now that bar has been raised quite a bit. You need to be an engineer to really provide value to filmmakers and content creators today. And you really need to value the people that have that skill set, factor them into your budgets. And as Jeroen said, they're no longer like back on the grip truck having a beer. They're right up front. They're an integral part of the process, because they're solving those problems, as Felix pointed out earlier, the dust, whatever comes up, that you have someone there to write code and keep the process moving forward. Because the more people get acclimated to this high visual fidelity, the more demand there is, and the less patience they're going to have to sit around and wait for someone to repair a glitch.
But the beautiful part is that now the conversation changes. When we sit in these rooms using real time, you have these high-level talent that have way more experience than I do. I mean, we're talking 30, 40 years of experience that now could actually see their photorealistic sets 6 months before they used to, right away. And now the conversations that happen when they sit together, the director, the DP, the executive producer, the set designer, and the set decorator, when they're sitting together, they're actually thinking about how to make it cheaper. Concept art is this big.
Right.
DP comes in, he makes it this big. Set this decorator comes in, she makes it this big, and then they go, well, this is all we're going to use. Why are we going to do the rest of that? And so it's fascinating when I hear some of these high-level creatives, because they have so much experience, not only design their environments, but in the same call go, oh, I just saved us $40,000, because they were able to cut out a piece that maybe was going to be physical that they made virtual, or sometimes it's virtual and they make it physical.
Right.
So having that virtual production and being able to visualize it and creating the blueprint is a large way to save.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We kind of got to the time limit on our panel here. Everyone's going to be in a breakout room or at a table.
Great.
So we bring some more questions to them as we end this official panel right now. Thank you so much, Michael, Felix, and Dane, and Jeroen for joining me in this sort of brainstorming discussion about how XR stages can maybe be the future for some themed entertainment cool attractions. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Special shout out to Jojo, who organized all of this.
Yeah, seriously.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jojo.
All right, we're going to be breaking out. This panel is going to end, and everybody can go now back and mingle.